Join us today as we make a homemade Black Joe cake. Hello everybody, my name is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead, and today we're making one of my favorite recipes, homemade Black Joe cake. In this recipe, you start with 1 cup of Black Joe. And Black Joe means very strong black coffee. I start this recipe by immediately brewing a cup of coffee and letting it cool. Now, if I don't have a lot of time to let it cool, I'll stick the entire cup into the freezer so it'll cool down before I need to put it into the cake mix itself. But you want very dark 1 cup of Black Joe. You bake this recipe on 350 degrees. So I'm going to set that first. Mine's actually always set on 350, so I just have to turn on bake and start. As your oven preheats, you are going to grease a 9x13 pan. Now, usually I use stoneware, but I am taking this cake to church tomorrow, so I am going to put it in a container that I don't need returned. In this cake recipe, it starts with mixing all your dry ingredients first. And so I have those all ready to stir into my mixer bowl. And I'm going to start with 2 cups of flour. I'm going to add 3/4 cup of cocoa. Now in the past, I have used the darkest cocoa that I can find. But I was unable to find dark cocoa at the store, so I used this one this time. But typically I use the very dark cocoa. At this point, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. The last 2 ingredients are 2 cups of sugar. A lot of sugar. And then the salt. And the salt is 1/2 teaspoon. Those are all the dry ingredients. Oh, oven is ready. And so I am going to stir this so they are all blended. For my kitchen aid, I am going to lower the beater in there and lock it in. And I'm going to stir it on low speed. I just want these ingredients blended. You can see that the cocoa is raising up. So I don't want to stir that so quickly that it all poofs up into the air. Once it's all stirred in, it's going to look very similar to a boxed cake mix. I'm going to unlock it here. Bring it all up, make sure there's powders off there. And put it back on my counter. At this point, you're going to want to stir it just a little bit with a rubber scraper. Make sure that everything is mixed in there so you don't see any white. You just want to see a light brown. Now it's time to add the liquid ingredient, and it starts with 1 cup milk. If you are used to making a boxed recipe, this is a homemade recipe, and it's going to be a lot thinner when you pour it into your pan. It's not going to be thick at all. It's going to be liquid. So we're going to start with 1 cup of milk. The next ingredient is 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. Good, didn't spill it. Scrape that on out of there. 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And I will put the recipe below so you can go back and you'll be able to find it. The next ingredient is 1 cup of coffee. Now, I don't rely on making a cup of coffee with my coffee maker. I actually, once it's made, I poured it into a measuring cup to verify that it was in fact 1 cup. It was actually probably 1 1/3 cups. So I brought it down so it was exactly 1 cup of coffee, and it is cooled. It is no longer hot from the coffee maker. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Very careful if you pour it over your mixing bowl like I just did. 1 teaspoon. And the last ingredient for our cake is 2 eggs. I'm going to just crack them right into our bowl. One and 2. You're going to place this back on your mixer and blend it until it is completely blended. So you don't want any of the white powder showing through. So what I do is I put it in here, I mix it for a little bit, then I shut it off, stir it, and continue until it is fully incorporated. I'm going to pour it into our baking dish. And as I said, this one is just an aluminum 9 by 13, but I am going to show you how thin this batter is. It is just liquid. And pour it on in. Scrape out the last little bit in the bottom. Now while this is baking, I am going to start making our icing that goes on top. It's very liquidy, it is full of bubbles. This is exactly what you want it to look like. Your cake will bake for 35 minutes or until a toothpick put in the center comes out clean. The original Black Joe cake that was passed down for generations in my family included a peanut butter icing, but it was so sweet that I could not eat it. Now, the combination of dark chocolate and peanut butter is fantastic. So I created my own icing recipe, and it is a cooked recipe that starts with just 2 ingredients, 1 cup of milk and 5 tablespoons of flour. You're going to pour both of these ingredients into a small saucepan. Doesn't have to be very large at all. So 1 cup of milk and 5 tablespoons of flour. Once you have these 2 ingredients in your pan, you're just going to start stirring it and cook it on medium heat until it's thick. And you will know immediately when it's thick because it becomes completely solid. We're not talking just a little thickness, we're talking until it's thick. I cooked our icing for approximately 5 minutes until it became very, very thick, like oatmeal thick. I cooled this pan of icing just a little bit, but for now I'm going to pour the entire mixture into a bowl. Just like this. Now this is very, very hot. The next step is to cool it completely. So I'm going to cover it. I cover it with plastic wrap. And make sure it's completely covered because if it's not, it's going to get a dry film on top. So cover it up with some plastic wrap. Make sure I got it all out of there. And let it cool until it's completely cool. You cannot frost your cake if it is hot. And the same goes for the cake. You can't frost it if the cake is hot. So typically what I do is I put this in the refrigerator and I continue the recipe the next day. It's about 8 hours since I have baked the cake and refrigerated the cooked milk and flour. And what we're going to do is we are going to very quickly make the icing. And there's just a few simple ingredients. The first thing is I have softened 1 stick of butter. So this is real butter. It is not completely melted. I simply zapped it in the microwave for 20 seconds. I'm now going to add 3/4 cup of peanut butter. Get that all in there. You want to make sure you scoop it all out. You don't want to leave any peanut butter in. And I'm using all natural. It's a little bit thicker. There we go. And then we are going to add 1 cup of sugar. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now that all those ingredients are in the mixing bowl, I am going to mix those until they are well blended. And this may take up to 3-4 minutes to make sure that everything is completely blended well. The longer you mix the butter, the sugar, the peanut butter, and the vanilla, the fluffier and lighter it's going to be. And it's each time you run it another minute, it's going to be lighter and lighter. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to stir in the mixture of flour and milk. And that's going to go right into our mixer. And again, you're going to stir it until it's light and fluffy. So another 3 to 4 minutes. And the last step is to ice your black Joe with peanut butter icing cake. And this icing has fluffed up so much. You're going to find there's a lot of icing in just this batch. So let's get that on there. You don't want to scrape the bowl completely because you definitely want to clean it out when you're all done with your finger. All right, just like that. You're gonna ice this cake. Now, because it has milk in it, you need to refrigerate it. I have found that if I'm taking it to an event, a couple things I do is I tape the ingredients list onto it because there are many allergies. That way everybody knows exactly what is in this cake. And second off, make sure you put it in the refrigerator. So I make it the day before, and that way it is so light and fluffy. This icing reminds me of pudding, and so it just gets better every day. Let me spread this out. All right, we're almost on the home stretch. This cake, even though it's homemade, has lots of steps. It's very, very easy. It is not hard to make a homemade cake. In fact, I think it's simple to make the cake. It's not hard at all. All right, there we go. Here is our homemade Black Joe cake with peanut butter icing. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe, share, and like. And thank you so much for all of your support. I will post the recipe down below, and you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.